Hi. Today we are going to be going over section 4.3, which is about comparing and ordering fractions, decimals, and percents. We do need to use the information that we learned previously in this chapter in order to be successful here. So hopefully you feel confident in those topics. When comparing and ordering fractions, decimals, and percents, write the numbers as all fractions, all decimals, or all percents. So basically, we want them to all be written in the same notation so that we can compare them and order them. It's sort of like when you're adding fractions, you need your denominators to be the same in order to put them together. In this case, we just need them to be in the same notation. So we're going to start with comparing 3/20ths and 16%. We want to know which one is greater. There's an important note over here that says, remember, it is usually easier to order decimals or percents than to order fractions. And the reason for that is, in order to compare fractions, they all need common denominators. And when you have two or more fractions, sometimes it can be challenging to come up with a common denominator. So I find it's typically easiest to order decimals or percents. Comparing, you can use fractions. It can be easier because when you're comparing, you're only working with two fractions. So I am going to change these to percentages. I'm not going to change them both to decimals because then I have to convert both of them. So I'm trying to make sure that I am working efficiently. So I am going to change 3/20ths into a percent, which means it needs to have a denominator out of 100. So we multiply both the numerator and denominator by 5. And that gives me 15 out of 100, which is 15%. So which is greater? 16%. All right, part B, which is greater, 79% or 8/100ths. Again, we don't want to convert them into fractions because neither of them is originally a fraction, so it's easiest to stay in a format that they're already in. I'm going to convert them to percents again. You can choose to convert them to decimals. It doesn't really matter. So 79 is already a percent, so I'm going to change 8/100ths to a percent. I'm going to move the decimal point 2 spaces to the right to make it a percentage. So that gives me 8%. So which one is bigger or greater? 79%. Sorry, that's so tiny. Could have written that a little bit bigger. Okay, example 2, we are ordering a whole range of numbers in different notations. So I am going to convert these all to decimals. I don't know. I noticed that 2 of them are already in decimal form, and I want to avoid changing them all to fractions. So for 3%, I move the decimal point 2 spaces to the left, which gives me 3/100ths. For 1/50th, I need to convert that into a fraction with 100. So I'm going to multiply the numerator and denominator by 2. And that gives me 2/100ths, which is the same thing as 2/100ths. And then last one that I need to convert, we have 8/10ths%. So I'm going to have to take my decimal point and move it 2 spaces to the left to turn this into a decimal. Now I have all decimal forms. Now remember, to order numbers from least to greatest, write them as they appear on a number line from left to right. You don't need to use a number line, but it could be helpful. So I'm going to start at 0. And my biggest decimal out of all of these looks like 300ths. And I'm going to split this into pieces. I'm going to split it into 3 equal pieces because I know that 300ths can be split into 3 equal pieces. And that way I can start filling in my numbers. So I know that 300ths is one of them. That is the 3%. I know that 200ths, which was originally the 1/50ths, was another number. I know that 25 thousandths is in between 200ths and 300ths. You can add zeros on the end to see that 25 is in between the 20 and 30 here. And then we have, where is it? We've got our 8 thousandths and our 5 thousandths. Well, 5 thousandths is smaller than 8 thousandths. 8 thousandths is a little bit close to 1/100th. And that was originally 0.8%. So now that we have all of our numbers on a number line, just to write it out, I do want you to note that I expect that your final answer has the original numbers given in the problem. Just in case you make any copying errors this way, we always go back to the original numbers. So we've got 5 thousandths, 0.8%, 1/50th, 25 thousandths, and 3%. Okay, example 3. You, your sister, and a friend each take the same number of shots at a soccer goal. You make 72% of your shots, your sister makes 19/25ths of her shots, and your friend makes 67/100ths of his shots. Who made the fewest shots? So again, in order to compare these, we need them all to be in the same notation. So I'm going to start with you, or me, in this problem, which is at 72%. My sister is 19/25ths, and my friend is at 67/100ths. So we have 3 different notations here, so it really doesn't matter which one you choose. I would just steer clear of the fraction because we might have to create common denominators. It is actually going to be an easier one for this, but we're going to steer clear of it. So I'm going to change them to decimals. So I'm going to take my decimal and move it backwards 2 here, and I get 72/100ths. I'm going to give this a denominator of 100 by multiplying by 4. Do the same thing to the numerator, and I get 76. So this is 76/100ths. And this one is already in decimal form. So who made the fewest shots? Our friend did. Okay, and last example. The map shows the portions of the U.S. population that live in 5 states. List the 5 states in order by population from least to greatest. Okay, so this is just an organization table here that we should be filling in. So I'm going to start with Michigan, which shows a decimal of 300ths. We're going to go to New York, which has a percent of 6. Next, we'll do Washington, which has a fraction of 1/50th. Then we'll do California, which has a decimal of 12/100ths, and Ohio, which has a fraction of 1/25. All right, so let's fill this in, this chart. So a decimal to a percent, we move the decimal point 2 spaces to the right. That gives me 3%. And we read this as 3/100ths, and we know that is simplest form. Okay, 6% means 6/100, which simplifies to 3/50ths. And we move our decimal place 2 to the left, which gives me 6/100ths. Okay, for this one, I am going to give it a denominator of 100 by multiplying the numerator and denominator by 2. That gives me 2/100ths, or move the decimal 2 spaces to the right, 2%. Okay, this is read as 12/100ths, which can be simplified. Let's see, 4 goes into both of those, so that gives me 3/25ths. And we move the decimal 2 places to the right for our percent. And last one, get this a denominator of 100 by multiplying by 4. That gives me 4/100ths, or move the decimal 2 places to the right, 4%. So we are ordering from least to greatest for population. So Washington looks to be the lowest. Then we have Michigan. Then we have Ohio. Then New York. And then California. And you can do that by comparing the fractions, which I think can be a little bit more challenging, the decimals, or the percents. And there's your answer, and those are the 4.3 notes.